Hello and welcome back to another Out of Spec Reviews video. Welcome here to San Romolo, which is home to some of the most historic rally racing in the world, just in Italy. And amazing place. And we have a really cool car that we're going to be shredding up some of the hills here. This is the brand new Audi e-tron S. Now in Europe, here, this car's been on the market for a year and a half, but just announced this car will be coming to the United States. So I'm so excited to see if e-tron will have a sporty character in the US now. Let me show you around this car. And then of course, let's get it out on some of the most amazing mountain passes and push it to its limits. This is the Audi e-tron S. This particular one is a Sportback. My preference would be for the full-sized e-tron, you know, the one that continues and then squares off in the back. But some people, I guess, prefer the styling of the Sportback. Thankfully, there's almost no difference between drivetrain, chassis, and braking systems, so it's not like you get any more performance going with the Sportback. This particular one has 500 horsepower, 3 motors, which is just insane. So you have a 150 kilowatt motor in the back and then 200-ish kilowatt motors each on the rear axle. Total system output's like 387 kilowatts, basically 500 horsepower. And you can have totally independent torque vectoring on the rear axle. There's no differential connecting to the two. This is actually the first car I've driven with a true tri-motor system. I haven't had a chance to go in the Plaid yet, and this is the first series production tri-motor electric car. So I'm really, really excited to see the possibilities on corner exit and also just regular handling dynamics with this 3-motor system. Of course, you're going to want to know price and range, and this car starts at around $80,000 in the US and will sell probably most of them with some options in this $85-ish thousand range, closer to 90 depending on spec, of course. And that's a lot of money, but if we think just a couple years ago, I'm pretty sure this is where regular e-tron started. So like a prestige model e-tron is where this car is now starting price. This seems like a pretty good value for a new one if you're considering this. So much more power, of course, than normal e-tron. Range shouldn't take a big hit, but I think there is a little bit more drag. You obviously have bigger wheels and things like this, more aerodynamic styling things. So yeah, you're probably going to lose a little bit of range, but e-tron has great range, 95 kilowatt hour battery pack installed, about 88 kilowatt hour usable. And the nice thing with it is you can use all of that range on a road trip because it charges so fast up to 80% state of charge. Even, 150 kilowatt from dead to 80. And then even after 80%, it's still doing like 100. At 95%, it's like still doing 80 kilowatts, something crazy. So on a road trip, you just let this thing charge and charge. About 30 minutes later, you have all the range in the world. And so that's where I think e-tron has its sweet spot. You have to not ignore the numbers, but the full charge range isn't the full story. As a road tripper, this car is great because that charging curve is truly fantastic, and that remains here in the e-tron S. The e-tron S also gets this massive braking system. Take a look at the size of this caliper here. Just insanely huge. Gotta love that. It has the dual charging ports. So over here on this side, you'll see DC pins. This one's a European spec car. So there you have CCS connection for the Euro side, type 2, I should say. And then on this side, which I don't think we're getting in the US, don't quote me on this, but I do want to show you anyway, you have just a regular type 2 connector AC right here, sort of similar to Taycan, but interestingly, Taycan and e-tron have their DC ports on the other side. So Volkswagen Group hasn't quite figured out what side they want their ports to be on. All of their cars have them in different locations. ID.4 is in the back. This one's on the driver's side front. Taycan's on the passenger side front. Pretty funny, a weird, new EV world. None of this is standardized yet, and it's hard for station design, I think. Anyway, this one also has the digital mirrors, which we are not able to get in the US due to regulations. Very cool looking mirrors. Personally, I don't think we're missing out though. It's a little bit awkward to use. Inside, well, this is nice. You get, of course, pebbled leather on the steering wheel, which is fine. That's a very hallmark of Audi S, but I prefer actually the full leather wheel. I mean, this is leather, but the smooth leather. You also gain this quilted stitching here in the seats, which look lovely. The seats are more aggressive. And everything else is good. The Bang & Olufsen sound system rocks. It's got heads-up display. It's got the great MMI infotainment system. It has great data when you're charging. It's got good back seat room. Nothing's really different here in terms of chassis or shell. I should say the shell of the car, the usability. It's just way faster. It has 3 motors and a totally reworked suspension and braking system. So that's what we're going to do and find out is it any better? Let's take it on some amazing roads and shred it up here to San Romolo. You join me inside of an e-tron S Sportback where we are shredding up some amazing roads. I have a tri-motor version. I have it in all sporty sport mode, ESC fully off, of course, scooter, and we are just having a great time up these roads. Now, before we get into the driving dynamics, let me tell you a little bit about the car. Same 95 kilowatt hour gross, 88 kilowatt hour usable battery pack that's in the e-tron 55 that we get in the US. We just call it the normal e-tron. This is a great car. I love the normal e-tron. As you know, I think it is the perfect compromise of everyday usability with comfort, like uber comfortable, all-wheel drive, great charging curve. This is e-tron's real hallmark for me, is just how well this thing charges. 150 kilowatt from 0 to 80% state of charge. This thing maintains 150 kilowatt, which means while the range may not be perfect on paper, you know, 220 miles, something like this, I think is what the newest one shows. It charges so fast that if you're road tripping an e-tron, you pretty much just go so far in between chargers because you're doing a deep charge cycle every time. It's really impressive. Excuse me for the bright sun. I know you can't see anything out of this camera right now. I can't see anything forwards. Crazy sunlight. And now we're in the S, so Audi's taken this normal e-tron 55 and they've added this crazy 3-motor system to it. I'll explain how this 3-motor system works here in a little bit, but interestingly, this car's been on sale in Europe for 1.5 years, and now we are finally getting it in the US. About time. Starts at about $80,000, maybe a little bit more, 83, 85. Most of them will go like 85 to 90 with like all the options. The Prestige trim, I think, is how it'll work. We'll get a base one and then the nice one. Yeah, 500 horsepower here in a a family SUV that's drifting capable, Audi claims. So you have 2 independent motors on the rear axle. And these are both induction motors, which is interesting, design decisions. So wide open throttle out of the corner. Oh, it's fast. No big car should drive this quickly. Now, I recently just drove this car on the way up here to the hills, and I drove it in comfort mode, everything super smooth, and it was a bit firmer than your normal e-tron. So one thing I love about the e-tron is I always say it flattens bumps, and it really just kind of floats along in comfort mode. This is, I think, one of the car's best hallmarks, its ride quality. That's a bit lost here, but what you gain is so much more performance. So if you need something you can tow with, throw the dogs in the back, and also shred up a canyon, well, look no further than e-tron S, because hot damn, this thing it seems to be the perfect blend of sporty, and it was still very comfortable inside. Now, I'm not digging this red color that I'm in, but the blue one that I'm following looks amazing. It really, I mean, it's heavy, this thing, no question, but it's doing pretty well to get up this road. So let me explain how this 3-motor system works. You have 3 fully induction motors, no permanent magnets here. That means from a launch, it may not launch that hard, but it's gonna ramp up. I mean, from a stop, we can try it. I'll come to a stop here, no one's around. And launch mode, it's good. Oh, at 40 kilometers an hour though, man, does it really ramp up and kick it. So this is just the nature of a induction motor. It really likes to be moving to get full power. I think that's fine because most people aren't going to, 0 to 60 only matters on paper. And it's not a bad 0 to 60. It's 4.5 seconds from 0 to 100K. So that's probably 4.2, 4.3, 0 to 60 miles an hour. In something this big, that's impressive. But that's not what the e-tron's all about. This isn't a statistics machine on paper. This is a real quality-oriented, nice driving dynamics, super well sound insulated product. And because it has 3 motors, I had dinner with the chassis engineers last night on this car. You can fully, or they can, but you can drive it this way, fully change, look, drifting it, you can fully adjust the torque vectoring on the rear axle. So you can say, okay, I want to overdrive the outside wheel and maybe even regen on the inside a little bit. And this is what we can do. We can actually slide the car around. Now they say ESC, so basically this functionality increases as you put it in more driving mode. So dynamic mode is the basis point for you know, the really hardcore torque vectoring, and then you can turn ESC into sport mode, and then this will allow for some rotation, some yaw, and then you can go full Hoonigan mode and fully turn it off. So I have everything fully turned off, but I have to say on these tight roads, powering out, yeah, it's a little bit slow speed to go. I mean, of course you can make little angles with the back end like we did there, but I think where this car is really impressive, man, these roads are so tight, where this car is really impressive is, they were saying, is like when you're on track or at speed and you can use the weight to your advantage to tuck the nose in, have the back end slowly come around, nail the throttle, and they're like, yeah, it'll just power on oversteer all day long. And I'm like, whoa, it's a new era at Audi. We're getting oversteer in cars. I just went for a ride in the RS3 yesterday, the new one with drift mode. Insane. And now their giant family SUV has this so-called drift functionality. It's not branded as any, but you can slide it. So for me, this is a great car for like my personal use. I live in Colorado at high elevation. Electric is not affected by elevation, and we have plenty of charging stations where I live. It really neutralizes when you get it on the throttle. But ESP, even with it full off, is actually on. I heard it clicking the brakes a little bit there. And now we can't see anything. It's so bright. Yeah, wow, calibration on the motors is awesome. It's really, really good. And the power is insane. No signs of thermal limiting either, and we've just been climbing straight up a mountain for a long time. This thing is fast. It really is. And the brakes are holding up way better than expected. They definitely must have fooled with the brake pedal calibration, because it feels so much better than normal e-tron in terms of having a firmer pedal that's immediate. Yeah, really good brake pedal calibration. Let's try the braking performance, shall we? Nice. You get this very odd sensation of ABS feedback in this pedal because it's a brake-by-wire system. So it's sort of the, I guess you get this reverberation of ABS, but you don't feel the individual pulsations, more or less. Let's get back on the throttle, back to full brakes. Great calibration, I have to say. That's really nice. Gave me a little bit of lockup, and then it went back to full ABS. Oh, music's coming, don't want that. Okay, so does it make sense? We'll get into driving in a little bit, but does it make sense that you need 500 horsepower, 3 motors in your family e-tron? No. And you get these little rotations. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm sort of coming out of the corners with a straight wheel when I'm smacking down the throttle. And it's really fun. No car should do this. This is the benefit of electric motors. Instant torque where you want it. And this is quite an impressive calibration here. So let's get through this little construction zone behind the blue e-tron. We'll let him go ahead because we might catch up a little bit. And then we will absolutely see how this thing drives when we push it a little bit harder. Beautiful roads up here in San Romolo, I don't know. Wow, amazing experience to be able to drive these historic rally routes in all-wheel drive, very high horsepower, very heavy cars. But no sign of understeer here. That's the big story for me, is I can get in this e-tron, we can stuff it in a corner, and it just powers out nicely. Look at this thing coming in. Let's, yeah, really good. Awesome. When you start getting up this thing, it does not seem to mind. It just gets better and better. So this is interesting. I have the car, of course, in full dynamic mode with ESP off in S, in sport mode. So that means I can go to the kickdown switch and get some power. And then if I hit the kickdown switch, which is a little button on the end of the accelerator pedal, it goes into the boost functionality, and then I get full power. This guy's trying to shred in front of us. I really don't want to push him. I'll just let him have some space, and then we can go. It looks like we have a crazy mountain pass section here in a little bit. Can't wait. Other than that, the interior is pretty much the same as normal e-tron. You get S seats with this nice quilted-ish leather pattern. That's fine. I actually like the normal e-tron seats. This particular one doesn't have massage function. I don't know if that's because it's an S or just because it's a Euro spec car. Again, we're in Italy right now. If we had a US spec car, I'd be more able to talk about the exact options that we're getting in our market. But really the story here is suspension, calibration, and drivetrain. So I've noticed you do lose a bit of ride comfort day to day, but you gain amazing throttle and brake calibration. The steering is totally different. I mean, I was driving the e-tron with one finger around the track because it was so light. Send it into this corner, full lift off oversteer. Went a little too hard into that corner, but that just means you're having fun. It's really a great chassis actually when you're pushing it hard. You're just gonna go through tires like crazy because of all the weight, and we're wide open down the back straight. Let's just get it into this corner here. Back's coming around, power on. So a little hop, but that means it's just stiff. Look at this thing, power on. Yeah, getting it in the e-tron. Brakes, turning, full power. Yes, small rotations. It's not like a drifting machine. It's still heavy and it still has a lot of grip, but I think if you put some cheap tires on this thing, you could do a drift day in it, no problem. Rally style. This thing on dirt would be amazing if we had a gravel circuit. Now we're talking. That's what this needs. You really have to go past the kick down switch to get full power. So you're just using this long throttle pedal all the time to get full acceleration. And boy, does it freaking motor. Brakes are holding up. I'm coming in hot on the brakes too. By the way, north of 220 kilowatt regen in this car too. Whoa, amazing, 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 amazing. It's heavy, don't get me wrong. And it's not meant to just be a drifter. Listen to the noise through the tunnel. Oh wait, it's an electric car, it doesn't make any. Standing on the brake pedal, throwing it into a corner, full power exit. This is what it's all about. This guy's moving in front of us too, but no problem to catch up, of course. Wow, good. So yeah, I think this is like, for me, I love it because I get everything I love from e-tron. A really overbuilt, well insulated, like crazy heavy, no dollar spent. What am I trying to say? No expense spared. There we go. Version of the e-tron. I mean, the leathers are nice. The build quality is nice. And now it's actually got some performance cred. Is this going to win in a drag race from Model X Plaid? No, but who does this? My opinion is they're all fast. You get used to the power no matter what. I don't know, maybe not this one, maybe not Plaid. Personally, look, I understand if people want to buy acceleration. I think it's amazing that the Model X is as fast as it is. It really is such an impressive car, and I do love that about that car, but it's sort of a one-trick pony, where here, it's just a much nicer car to drive. The steering is amazing. The build quality of just refinement is really nice. I can just play with these little angles like I was doing there, and this is what I really enjoy doing, full power. Yeah, it doesn't really like to come out of a corner sideways. And part of this is because the induction motors do take some time to spin up. What a road and what a car. So e-tron S, should you buy it? Well, if you're buying a new e-tron, it doesn't seem like it's that much more expensive in my opinion. It almost seems like it's the same price as the first year normal e-tron. So if you live in a twisty, performance-y kind of driving scenario, like in the mountains of Colorado where I live, 100%. If you live in Florida or Louisiana and you're just gonna drive it normally, I think you just get the normal e-tron and get the better ride comfort, would be my impression. But man, no question, this thing does things that only really an electric, well-engineered car could do. It's just as simple as that. I love it. I think it's great. But I would buy the boxy one. Don't buy the Sportback, in my opinion. Everyone says the Sportback looks better in Europe. Everyone says it looks worse in the US. I don't know. But yeah, I think the boxy one's better, and there's no difference between the chassis on both cars. So there you have it. We are in the e-tron with the big battery, 3 motors, 500 horsepower, 4.3-ish, 4.4 seconds, 0 to 60. That's not manufacturer quoted. This is just me making the difference between 0 to 100K to 0 to 60 miles an hour. We have beautiful headlights, beautiful taillights, really good build quality, and plenty of space. And if you live on a mountain road, you're getting home real quick in this thing. Awesome, awesome time, really is. Let's rock and roll, full throttle. Woo! So much fun. See you on the next one.